My daughter was trafficked every day after school. She would be taken to a local house near the school where 8 to 10 gentlemen would be waiting, and she couldn't leave until she was finished. She reached out to the school over 22 times. The school did not get back to her once, nor did the school notify my husband and I that something was going on.
Were your daughter's traffickers prosecuted?
No. One of the traffickers got 12 months probation. Yes. But no one was ever charged with trafficking.
You've said, okay, we lived this experience, and rather than just put that in a box, we're going to lean into where are the major gaps.
No one is addressing the need for parents and siblings. Everyone in our family was diagnosed with complex PTSD.
What would you say to some of the parents that are going, how do I protect my kids to potentially prevent something like this from happening?
I often tell parents,
hello, friends, and welcome to the Team Protectors podcast. I'm Brittany Dunn, COO and co-founder of Safe House Project, and I'm joined today by my co-host.
I'm Christy Wells, the CEO and other co-founder of Safe House Project. Safe House Project is a national anti-trafficking organization that works to help train people to identify and respond to human trafficking. We help victims of human trafficking escape and find healing, and ultimately we want to ensure that every single survivor has access to the care and services that they need to begin a life full of hope, freedom, and a future.
So we're joined today by my friend, Susan Young. Susan's family has experienced firsthand what it is to have a child go through the experience of human trafficking. But through that, she also founded an organization called the Parent Coalition and works to advocate not only on behalf of survivors today, but also their families. So Susan, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you, Christy, for having me here today.
So as we kind of get started, we would love to hear just a little bit about what happened with your family. When did this start to transpire? What were some of those early signs that you were noticing?
So our situation occurred roughly 13 years ago. At the time, my eldest daughter was 15 years of age. She was just getting ready to start her freshman year of high school. Also wanted to give you a piece of background information is I have 3 additional children. And at that time, their ages were 12, 11, and between 2.5 and 3. Courtney was getting ready to start her freshman year. So a group of girlfriends went to a local movie theater to kind of celebrate the end of summer and her 15th birthday. While she was there, she met a young boy similar in age and who also lived in the area. He presented himself as an innocent, well-rounded young man, but unfortunately, he was an MS-13 gang member. And his job was to seek out these young girls and to recruit them into the dark world of human trafficking. Their friendship began very simple. They exchanged Facebook information along with their cell phone information. And all of this information Courtney shared with us. She didn't keep anything back at this time. We were very involved in her life as her parents. So we knew about this young man, and we knew about their online friendship. But once she started high school, this individual introduced her to MS-13 gang affiliates at her high school. And again, similar to this boy, it was very innocent. And then it transitioned slowly to they started harassing Courtney, and she started to learn the true nature of their intention. Courtney was very afraid at this point, and she reached out to the school over 22 times for help and intervention. And the school did not get back to her once, nor did the school notify my husband and I that something was going on with Courtney at that time and that she was reaching out for help. So what the boys did is once they learned that Courtney was seeking out help and intervention from the school, they decided to silence her. So they took her to a secluded part of the school property where she was pushed to the ground and gang raped while multiple individuals taped and watched. And that's what the gang used to really manipulate Courtney and get her to start trafficking. And she was trafficked every day after school. She would be taken to a local house near the school where 8 to 10 gentlemen would be waiting, and she couldn't leave until she was finished. Now, at home, we saw Courtney was spiraling out of control. Her moods were shifting. She started missing class. Her weight started to change. And my husband and I could not get this behavior under control. We knew deep down something was wrong, but every time we approached Courtney, she would lie. She would say she was okay, that we were overreacting. We were being overbearing as parents. We weren't letting her have her space. And we also monitored her electrical devices at the time. And we saw no problems, no outside influences that would negate this behavior from happening. So my husband and I were really at our wits' end. What was going on with our daughter, and how can we help her from spiraling out of control? And so we did not know the full scope of what was happening to Courtney at that time.
Well, first, thank you so much for sharing that. We understand that it takes a lot to share your family's experiences, especially when it's something as hard and as painful as that for Courtney and then for you and your other children. I know that you've shared with me over the years that it obviously didn't just impact Courtney, but can you share a little bit about just even that impact on your other kids?
Yes. So unfortunately, the gang sought after our other 3 children as well. And that was really the manipulative tool that they used to keep Courtney into trafficking. They would tell Courtney that if she didn't comply, that they were going to kill my husband and I, or that they were going to hurt her 2 younger brothers or sister. And so for their safety, Courtney complied. But the gang would come to our house. My husband and I would, once a week, we would go on a bike ride together. It was our special time that we could bond together as a couple. And sometimes the 3-year-old would come with us, and sometimes she would be napping. But as we would leave out the front door, the gang would come in the back door, and they had open access to the children for that hour and a half time period that we were gone. The other children were abused. The boys were raped as well. And our 3-year-old daughter was drugged at the time. And to the gang, this was something that they just thought was amusement, right? But they were destroying 4 lives that they didn't think anything out. And so we didn't learn about what had happened to our other 3 children until we had relocated. Our family had moved to a safe location to where the gang couldn't find us. And then the 3 other children felt safe enough to disclose what had happened.
So as those signs started to become present, what was the turning point where you finally realized what exactly was happening to your daughter?
We didn't learn the full scope of what happened to Courtney until she was in her first inpatient residential therapy. And that was due to the fact of kind of the red tape of the bureaucracy within the police department, the healthcare system, and even within like therapies in general. Because at that time, Courtney was over the age of 12 and a half. So they didn't feel that it was right for me to know what was happening with her. Whenever I would take her to a therapist, we would always be isolated and separated. I was never allowed to hear what she was saying. So again, I had an indication that something had happened. Again, she was not speaking out for fear of retaliation from the gang. And the doctors weren't disclosing to us what had happened. So once she was in her first residential therapy setting and she knew that the gang no longer had access to her, she was then comfortable enough to say, this is what happened to me. I was put in these trafficking rings and gang raped by multiple individuals. But it was probably 2 months after she was recovered the second time that we learned the scope.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
The process of recovery is complicated.
Yes.
What has that looked like for you all? Because 15 years ago, we know that safe homes are effective tools because it's education, it's life skills training, it's therapy, it's being in a community of other survivors who have experienced many of the things that you've experienced, and that's what we work to put survivors into. But 15 years ago, really, I don't know that any really existed in the US. So, what did healing look like for her and you trying to kind of piece that together?
It was very difficult 13 years ago to get services for Courtney and our other three children. Um, Most therapists, the trauma-informed was a term that was just coming about. They did not know a lot about what that was or how it affected victims of human trafficking. We were able, through the detective who rescued Courtney, we were able to put Courtney into a facility that had a trial program for soldiers coming back from Iraq who were suffering from PTSD. And so they were doing a study where they had several human trafficking victims that were recovered, and they were trying new therapies to help the victims of human trafficking. And it was a pure trial basis, right? Each victim was treated differently according to their signs and symptoms. And for Courtney, there was a lot of medication involved, which is both good and positive. But again, that we did not know a lot about that. In hindsight, being 2020, I probably would have done things differently to help her. But again, we didn't have many resources at that time to choose from.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, if there's a victim of human trafficking, you kick down doors, you rescue them, and then they go back home and everything's great.
No.
And so the process of healing has really been extensive to guide her through
Yes.
Through healing.
Yes. Courtney was in inpatient residential therapy for 4.5 years, and we're 13 years shy of the incident, and Courtney is still in therapy and will need therapy most likely for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
She still battles the complex PTSD, anxiety. It's hard for her to be in a large setting where there's a lot of people, crowded areas. And those will be things that she will most likely suffer for the rest of her life. Along with our other children, they don't like crowds. They don't like loud noises, bright lights. Everyone in our family was diagnosed with complex PTSD, anxiety. And it's something that we will navigate for the rest of our lives.
I think this is so moving. It's just so much to carry that weight for 4 kids and to see the levels in which your resilience still comes through and just your heart and compassion. And I think that's what's always stood out about you to me is that despite hard circumstances and trauma, you've really found other ways to try to find solutions.
Yes.
And so I would love to hear just from your lens, as you've seen so many broken systems, where are those opportunities that we've moved into of finding solutions, but where are also the opportunities to continue to grow?
We definitely need to continue to grow with the criminal justice system. A lot of times we still treat victims as criminals, and we need to change that behavior. We really need to change that narrative that they are victims, and they need the appropriate care to be able to heal and move forward with their lives. Same with the healthcare system. That if a victim comes forward, is brave enough to come forward, that there are the resources there to help them, right? We need to get away from some of the bureaucracy and red tape and realize at the end of the day, this is a person seeking help. This person needs help, and this person deserves help. And we really need to start by applying laws that support victims and families. Like I said, our whole family was affected by this situation. We were able to seek help for Courtney, but there was very little resources for the rest of us. My husband and I had to seek outside care for the two of us. Again, very little resources for us. So we really need to change that because through the Parent Coalition, I also work with parents who have gone through similar circumstances. And again, they're finding the same issue. There's very little resources for parents and siblings and family members. And when you expect a victim to come back and reintegrate into the household, you need everyone to be on the same page. Because if everyone is in different parts of the healing process, you can't collectively take a step forward together in the healing process. So everybody needs to be unified and on the same page of healing. And I feel that, especially in the healthcare system, with understanding what trauma is, trauma-related issues, we need to move forward with that and have a better understanding of how to help these people.
So I think for our audience, I just want to kind of draw out a few key things that Susan said just in this short bit that we've already been talking. I know that we're going to continue. But 22 times reaching out within her school. Courtney reached out 22 times for help. Mm-hmm. Where are the misses in our education system right now? Where do we have deficiencies of kids not being trained on what human trafficking is, as well as our staff and faculty understanding how to respond if a child does disclose? These are really important issues that we as community members can wrap around and put that pressure on our school districts to say, please lean into this issue. Understand that the average age a child is first trafficked in the United States is only 12 years old. Mm-hmm. We have a responsibility as parents, as community members, and as U.S. citizens to protect our kids where they spend majority of their day. And then I think the other piece here is the healthcare network. Mm-hmm. 12 and a half years old, and that's when we stop receiving information as parents about our children's health care?
Yes.
That seems
unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable. There's no other words. We have to be able to have the information that we need in order to help guide our children through their really formative years. Mm. And so I think it just goes back to how important policy and advocacy is, and that each of our voices truly matters, and we must use those voices if we want to impact change. So how are you all at the Parent Coalition really rallying together to do this?
So we are really rallying to help parents, and I'll share briefly that I had a parent come forward about 6 months ago, and her daughter is in her early 20s and has been in a trafficking situation for well over 7 years. And this mother has been reaching out as far as she can for services for her husband and the rest of her family. Because like us, they are all going through this together. Yeah. And she said, Susan, I have searched for 7 years, and you are the only person in this country that I have found that is supporting families and parents. She said, there's no one else out there. There's now services for victims, but no one is addressing the need for parents and siblings. And so that is what we're doing at the Parent Coalition. We are surrounding parents. We are surrounding grandparents, siblings, anyone who is involved in this situation. We want to put wraparound services around them to help them, because it was a trickle effect in our family, and it's a trickle effect in most families. If you think about it, every victim is someone's child, right? There's a grandparent, someone is attached to that child, and they may not be present up front, but they are somewhere, and they're going to have to deal with the fact that their child was trafficked, and that is heavy, and that is heartbreaking. And it's overwhelming, sometimes to the point that you can't breathe, right? And then trying to explain that to other siblings. So we are being that wraparound care. We are finding services for them. We are helping them navigate the criminal justice system. If they need additional support services for their other children, we're helping them find them. Basically, anything that they need, we are there to help guide them through that process, through the reintegration process, through the healing process. We're helping them take the steps forward towards healing.
Yeah, when we founded Safe House Project, one of the things that we really felt called to was to find the gaps and fill the gaps. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's exactly what you've done. You've said, okay, we lived this experience, and rather than just put that in a box, we're going to lean into where are the major gaps.
Yes.
Just continuing to hear about your 3 other children and the horrific things they've experienced, and knowing that the services haven't been there for them, it just breaks your heart because it really, to your point, it shows that ripple effect of trauma, of experience, and that it happens to the whole family. And
Yes.
so, um, I
Yeah.
guess, go ahead.
I'd love to hear, how have you leveraged this to impact policy? We understand that we've got to have stronger legislation to support victims. Um, how have you brought in policy work into some of your activities? Have you engaged with legislators in any way?
So one of the things that I'm working on is I want to classify families as a victim, right? Because our insurance was able to classify Courtney as a victim of human trafficking.
Right.
But for my husband and I and our other 3 children, it was, sorry, tough luck, right? And we had to financially burden all of that for their recovery.
That's significant.
It is. And I want to classify the entire family as a victim. So insurance companies will have to cover that recovery process because everybody deserves to heal and recover. And at the end of the day, try to resemble their life again. So that's one of the things that I'm moving forward with legislation.
That's so interesting and so needed, because even when you extend this into other circumstances where you're looking at those who have been trafficked that maybe are 17 and end up with children, that they don't get the services, or they're trying to get the services that they need. But if that person isn't supported, then you're potentially looking at other cycles of victimization, that now their kids have the ability to be exploited. And so I think being able to help a family unit heal from the
Yes.
perspective of how you all went through it, but also being able to break some of those generational cycles
Yes.
that are there when somebody might exit the trafficking situation, but the kids have experienced other impacts of human trafficking. Maybe they've been around the buyers and the traffickers, and maybe they've been around, maybe they've been sexually abused in some level. And so I think that's a really critical piece of care that's needed, that definitely hasn't. I agree. It's a gap that it hasn't been addressed in the country.
Yes, and we're also seeing, so the Parent Coalition since 2017 has helped 236 families. And out of that, I can say that 50% of those families don't move forward. The parents separate. It's too hard for them to move forward. So parents really need services. They need the help. They need the guidance. And by the grace of God, my husband and I were able to stay together and move forward. But to already go through such a devastation of your child, and then to have the marriage end, I could not imagine what would happen to our family if that happened to us. If my family had already suffered through this tragic loss, and then my children had to go through a divorce, we're seeing the degradation of the family, right, and of children through this. And we, as the community and individuals, need to stand up and say, this is enough. We need to fix this issue. We need to put the family back together. We need to heal and repair these victims so that we don't have this devastation. It's horrible.
What would you say to some of the parents that hopefully are watching that are going, how do I protect my kids? We're looking at a digital age. We're looking at, some of these things. Your daughter met the individual out in an open setting, but now in a digital age, tactics of traffickers and buyers are changing substantially. What would you say to parents that are on maybe the proactive side to potentially prevent something like this from happening?
I'm a firm believer that education is prevention. I often tell parents, if I had a tenth of the knowledge that I do now, I know that I could have prevented our situation from escalating and Courtney from being trafficked. I think prevention education is key for parents to know the warning signs and symptoms of trafficking. And at the first sign of something isn't right, to reach out for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, learning more, reaching out if something isn't right, just trying to figure it out. And the second thing is the open communication with your children. Our children, like you said, live in this digital age that it's hard for us to even navigate, let alone children. And so we, as their parents, really need to be that resource for them, right? We need to be that protective communicator that says, hey, I'm always here for you. You can always come to me no matter what. I am your safe spot.
Right.
And, sometimes they may disclose things that we don't want to hear, but we need to be okay with that, and we need to move forward,
Right.
And be the support system that they need. And we also need to teach our children healthy communication, right? What is healthy communication? What is not healthy communication? What is a healthy relationship? What is a toxic relationship? More importantly, what do you do when a relationship turns toxic?
Right.
Children do not have those tools and resources to know what to do. So we need to teach them and kind of pre-program those responses in them. We need to empower them to have the resources. And in order to do that, we as parents need to have that information first to teach them. So that's why I'm a firm believer that prevention education is key. And if you're seeing a sign or a red flag, reach out for help right away.
Yeah. So one of your opportunities would be to go to iamonwatch.org, and there's a free 1-hour training that Safe House Project developed alongside survivors about what were their intersection points with community members, what were some of those signs and indicators, and how you could have people could spot those earlier. So we really encourage you to utilize a tool like On Watch. But there's also a lot that we do. Susan's been part of an organization that we had the opportunity to acquire last year, Anti-Trafficking International, who has the Just Ask prevention curriculum that goes in and helps middle school and high schoolers understand what are those protective factors that they can put around themselves. How can they ask for help early on? Right. And I think that that's really critical to your point. It's all about education and awareness. And I'm going to be real honest, as a mom who has young kids, I mean, Christy and I founded this when I had a 3-week-old on the table. So when we say we have young kids, like
literally on the dining room table as we're trying to figure out how we're gonna build this.
But as 3 moms, like we know the importance of these early conversations, these candid conversations. Yes. And so teaching your kids even young anatomically correct body parts is key. There are guides in On Watch that tell you how to have these conversations when they're as young as 2-3 years old. You can talk about what does it mean to have a safe touch or an inappropriate touch. What is a secret versus a surprise? I always love that one because we talk about secrets like they're like, don't tell anybody. If your child can't tell anybody a secret, that's a really terrifying piece of information they're protecting, whereas a surprise is something they get to tell somebody eventually.
Yes.
And so helping a child understand all of those pieces can help make sure that they feel equipped to communicate effectively with you.
Yes. I used a tactic for our youngest daughter of role-playing, right? I would give her different scenarios, and I would ask her, for me to know where she would stand on a subject. I would say, Elizabeth, if you were out with your friends and someone started to bully another child, how would you react? And she would tell me. And so it gave me a grounding point of where I knew Elizabeth was. And there I could grow and say, well, what about this? Maybe if you went to a teacher or went to the principal. And so I could gently make suggestions for her there. So it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't fear-based. It was more suggestion. But it gave me a clearer indication of where Elizabeth was. And from that point, I could grow and point her in a better direction. And of course, as she grew, the topics became harder and harder. But again, as a parent, it let me know where her mind was and how she would react while empowering her to make the right decisions at the same time.
I love that because it's meeting the child where they're at, and it's recognizing that these aren't one-time conversations.
Yes.
That's the big thing. we're like, oh, I had the sex talk or I had the sex trafficking talk. But if you only have it once, that doesn't mean it's going to translate. So it's about investing in our kids' lives and stepping in. And I know you've done this a lot.
I've done this.
I mean, you're living this with twin boys.
14-year-old boys.
And a 12-year-old daughter.
It is. And it's the constant conversation of, hey, you might not like this.
Yes.
But my job is to protect you and to have open and honest conversations and dialogue with you. And this conversation might be a little uncomfy for me as well. But you know what? I want to somebody's going to have a conversation
Yes.
with them that's going to set the tone for whether it's normal or not. And I want to be the one that says, here's the standard, so
Mm-hmm.
that when there's a deviation from that, then they know that it's a deviation versus things that
Yes.
get introduced by somebody else and that becomes their baseline for normal.
Yes.
And this is what a normal relationship looks like because somebody else has defined it before we ever had the opportunity to say, this is what a healthy relationship looks like, and this is what an unhealthy one looks like. And so it's educating us
Mm-hmm.
ourselves on what are the different tangential pieces, that it's not just this is sex trafficking, you need to look out for it, but
Yes.
it's what does healthy relationships look like, what does online safety look like, what does consent look like.
Right.
Yes.
We've even had the conversations with my kids when they started to get a little bit older. And we would go into settings, and my very sweet family members would be like, "Oh, that's so and so. Go give him a hug." My kids had no idea who this person was,
Yes.
and so I could see as they got older that there was more and more discomfort there.
Yes.
And finally,
Boundary.
I got to the point, because then if they didn't, it was that my children were being rude
Right.
instead of an adult was putting them in a position of stating, "This is somebody that is going to touch you, and you need to be accepting of this." And so
Yes.
we would start to tell our children, "Hey, you don't
Don't
have
have
to
to.
do this.
Yes.
And if you can go up and you can shake their hand, and this is a way to be polite and engage them, and do it differently."
Yes. And I love that you empower them
Right.
by doing that because, I grew up in the generation where children are seen and not heard,
Mm.
right? Respect at all costs. And I saw where that really, especially with our oldest daughter, it hurt her in a way because we didn't empower her. I didn't give her that ability
Mm.
as her mom to say no, or I didn't like this, or I felt uncomfortable. So now I empower all my kids. Any thought, any feeling they have, it's not bad. We just learn from it,
Mhm.
right? And we grow.
Right.
We talk about it. If they want to know more about something, we're the family now where no topic is off the table for discussion. But I've also seen where my relationship has grown with my children.
Mm-hmm.
They trust me more. They open up to me more. And I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I love that they're able to do that with me now.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit to, I love that you made the point about just how important it was for you and your husband to really unify during this time. And that I can't imagine was easy when you're both, as you said, on different parts of your healing journey. If we have some listeners who are walking this out as parents, what are your words of encouragement to them right now as they're journeying, maybe at an earlier stage, obviously, than where you're at now?
I would want to say that everybody's path towards healing is different.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get bogged down by the stigma of healing because you may see another family member or person healing in a certain way that you have to follow that way, right? Each of our path is different. And that was the same for my husband and I.
Mm-hmm.
We both had to do things in order to survive that situation. And we just understood that about one another. He had to go to work and focused on work while I had to focus on the kids and focus on their healing. And then at the end of the day, we had to come together and try to figure it out. And that worked for us, right? And we knew that we had to stay together and find a way no matter what. Because if we didn't survive, we knew our children weren't going to survive the situation. And that was not acceptable to us. So I would tell the listener, there is no right or wrong way towards healing. Find what works for you and for your spouse. I would first seek help from a professional and reach out to help. But don't get bogged down in the what ifs. Don't get bogged down in it's my fault. I should have, could have, would have done this differently. We all have regrets in life. We all have things that we could have done differently. Focus on your healing. Focus on moving forward and focus on moving your family forward and slowly take those steps. And as you start to walk, you will see your family healing as well.
What do you think some of the greatest opportunities are for the U.S. to improve our approach to trafficking? Where do you think our current gaps still are?
One of my current frustrations, if I'm perfectly honest, is that we're still having the conversation that trafficking is it even happening in our country?
Right.
Right?
I hate that we're still there.
We are still
I
there.
mean, it's been 20 years and
Yes.
20 plus years, and we're
Yes.
still there.
Yes. And that is a huge frustration of mine. I feel that we should be much further in that discussion. We need to formally, train all law enforcement, right, to recognize human trafficking and that they're trauma informed, right? How do they help a victim? We need to get the healthcare system on board. We really need to put policies in place for victims once they are recovered and have adequate care for them afterwards. You and I both know that there are so few facilities that even still help victims of human trafficking.
Right.
And if you're lucky enough to be the lucky victim to be able to receive care, okay, that's wonderful, but there's 1,000 behind you that are still not receiving care that they deserve, right? We need just comprehensive legislation for victims, for families, to really move everything forward, right? We're very much stuck in a situation where we were 20 years ago, and I feel that it's time that we really need to move forward at this point.
Yeah.
When you you and I have had this conversation, which I love. So when you think about where you want us to be in 15 years, 20 years, I know you have some big visions.
Yes.
What would that look like for you? What would your dream state be?
My dream state would be to create a federal agency for human trafficking that works at the state and federal levels. I want both. I use the Department of Homeland Security blueprint, right? So that it works together, that there is advocate care for victims. The state and federal agencies, law enforcement work together, that there is a proper human trafficking hotline in each state, because we know that each state works differently and trafficking looks different in each state. But there is both the state and federal law enforcement that would interdict those victims as well. And then comprehensive legislation at the state and federal level that would go after the traffickers and the buyers, protect the victims, and that would also include proper legislation for the online platforms. We really need to start addressing that as well, and hold them accountable where they need to be.
So you, as you're talking about the prosecution for traffickers and buyers, I know we have a lot of improvement to do. Were your daughter's traffickers prosecuted?
No.
No.
One of the traffickers was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
And got 12 months probation.
What?
Yes. Yes. And no one was ever charged for the trafficking of Courtney or the abuse of our other 3 children, because at that time, state laws in Virginia were not passed for victims.
Yeah, it was before 2015.
It was before 2015. So when Courtney was recovered, the police were threatening to charge a 15-year-old girl with prostitution.
Wow.
And so my husband and I at the time decided to leave the issue alone, that was not what we should pursue. Our main goal was to heal our family and get Courtney the services that she needed. And we hoped and prayed that one day the judicial system would catch up with where it needed to be. But no one was ever charged with trafficking Courtney, ever.
I think that's the thing that so many people need to understand, is that for the prevalence of human trafficking in the United States, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids that are trafficked. And
Yes.
and let's say we are only identifying 1%, which is roughly the number that we're at right now. That's 3,000 kids verified human trafficking. And we have had how many cases prosecuted for human trafficking federally in the United States? I think last I saw it was like 867. Something
Since 2000.
since 2000. Like,
Yeah.
incredibly low. And
Yes.
these are not wishy-washy cases. This is, you have a child who has been sold for commercial sex. That should be considered trafficking in every state. We've talked about how some states have not even made purchasing a minor for sex illegal. California still can't figure it out because they're debating on whether or not it should be legal for somebody to purchase a 16 or 17-year-old for sex. But we have such a broken framework if they're not deeming that trafficking. Why are we still so backwards?
Yes, and
That's
why
really my question.
Why are we going after the buyers? Why
Right.
is there no legislation? Why are the law enforcement not going after the buyers? It's infuriating me, and I don't understand why we're still at this point. I don't.
I said it on the last episode. Texas, I feel like, actually got something really right, where they made first-time sex buying a felony. It's not a question. It's not a, we'll give you a few times to test the waters, and then we're going to do something. It's, if you are caught, it is a felony, period.
Yes.
And I think we have to have those strong deterrent pieces of legislation. Otherwise,
Yes.
what's the penalty?
And the school systems, we as parents should be able to send our children to school and know that they are protected and know that they're safe. And so many people can't. So there has to be some type of repercussions for parents to pursue against the school systems.
Right. That of the pieces that you shared of your story, those early potential intervention points are so critical and maddening.
Yes.
And I've seen this across the board in a variety of different types of issues where schools are and healthcare are saying it's okay for us not to share vital information to the parent. And that is endangering a child.
Yes. Yes.
Have you fought any of that in Virginia and in other states? Or I know there's a lot of different areas that you can tackle
She
this.
could probably tackle the entire
I
issue.
know,
I've seen this woman in action. She's a force. You put her in front of the legislators and she can have them weeping.
Right. Because there's responsibility on healthcare providers say do no harm, but then the harm that is coming to a child, they're not sharing with a parent.
Right.
How is that even legal?
That is a very good question, Christy. Yes, yes. And for our case, we did pursue legal action against the school as much as we could because the school system is protected, right? So they paid for some of Courtney's educational services when we were going through this process for Courtney. We had to deem her emotionally disabled, right, in order to receive these services, which we did. And our attorney helped us through this process, and we had an amazing attorney at the time. But the school fought us when I wanted to put that Courtney was part of a human trafficking ring in the school, which she was.
Right.
And they fought for me many weeks over that, and I wouldn't not proceed forward unless it was in her IEP. And they finally conceded and allowed that Courtney was a victim of human trafficking that happened at the school and in and around the area. And I made sure it was very clear in the paperwork that Courtney was a very healthy, vibrant 15-year-old young woman when she went in the school, but she was not leaving that same way. And that kind of made them unhappy. So I refused to sign any NDAs and things like that they wanted me to sign. But there was no other movement forward. They wouldn't create new policies to protect students. Nothing. In fact, it was kind of the opposite. It was, what can we do further to protect ourselves and our teachers? which I think is very alarming and scary in and of itself.
Right. Well, so as we close, I just want to thank you for your courage and just the grit that you come at this issue with. I've watched you serve on the Governor's Commission for Virginia. I've watched you advocate in Washington, and you are fierce with that mama bear, and I love it.
Thank you.
But for those who are listening, think about the ways that you can train and equip yourselves. Think about the ways that you can advocate for prevention education for our kids and in our schools, and then strengthening our moral fabric. You talked a lot about families. How do we just improve communication with our kids? So if you take away anything, know that there are parents out there who believe in the future of our kids, who want to protect our kids. And Susan is here as an advocate for those who've experienced this, and also, more importantly, to prevent trafficking before it starts. So on behalf of our team here at Team Protectors, thank you for joining us for this episode. We look forward to seeing you next time.